And incidentally, when Dinesh says, well, the Christians will write checks and the Buddhists won't, I suspect that's a slur. What's certainly true is that three of the greatest philanthropists in the history of the United States, and the two greatest living philanthropists in the United States, who have given more than anyone else to fighting global poverty, have not been religious. I'm talking about Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. They have given vastly more than anyone else, vastly more than any Christian in the history of the world has ever given to fight global poverty. And the third person I was thinking of is Andrew Carnegie, who also, in terms of inflation-adjusted dollars, would be close to being up there, though not quite, with Gates and Buffett. Also not a religious person. So there's plenty of atheists who help, and I certainly believe we should do a lot more to help. So a lot of my writings has talked about what we ought to be doing to help the hungry and the poor in the world. And I give a substantial portion of my income to do that. I dare say that I give more than 99% of Christians in this country give. And I know that many other people do as well. Now, look quickly at the arguments. It's not actually clear that our universe has a beginning. Dinesh says this, and he talks, of course, about the Big Bang. But if you really look at what a physicist says, physicists are really talking about the known or observable universe. If you talk to physicists who study the Big Bang, and I've talked to Professor Lyman Page at Princeton University, who is one of the greatest experts in this area. In fact, he's the one who, through measuring cosmic background radiation, has done more to precisely date the Big Bang than anyone else. And he will acknowledge that he's just talking about the universe that we observe now. He does not know, and science does not know, what happened before the Big Bang. But I think it's clear that there was a universe. It's hard to imagine nothing existing and the bang occurring out of nothing. And it's possible, as some have suggested, that there's a constant oscillation of expansion and collapse of the universe. So the universe may well, I would suggest probably has existed forever. And if it hasn't, of course, you have to say, Dinesh has to say, that God has existed forever. But that's just as implausible, just as difficult to imagine, I would say, as the universe existing forever. So there's certainly no favouring for a theistic view there. At best, it's a tie. The universe, the universe is supposed to be fine-tuned for life. Well, very briefly, not necessarily so. A lot of scientists think, again, Lyman Page thinks, that these claims that, like the one from Hawking that Dinesh quoted, are simply false. That you could vary these things quite a bit, and you would have perhaps different universes, but you would have universes capable of life. And of course, since we are here, we know that we live in a universe that is one capable of supporting life. Otherwise, we simply wouldn't be here to observe it. We'll leave it at that. Thank you.
We're now going to move into cross-examination. If you've never seen this before, let me just explain a little bit about it. Each of the debaters will ask the other questions, and will rely on their gentlemanly attitudes to keep their responses to the point and short, and allow the other person to ask a question after they're finished answering. We will start as our usual pattern. Dinesh D'Souza, why don't you ask the first question in the section of cross-examination, and we'll go on for about 15 or 16 minutes with this.
Let's begin. I want to come back to some of the themes I raised at the very beginning, because you've sort of ignored them, really, and move on to talk about suffering and other things. So let me ask you this question. Let's assume that society moved in the direction that you want. We're a secular society. We've eliminated the idea of God. And now someone proposes a law to deal with some of the people in our society who are physically and mentally handicapped. And the law basically says that if you've got people who are so handicapped that they don't have their full faculties, they can't live a very meaningful life, and they have no family, they have become dependent on the state. So the idea is to get those people together and give them all lethal injections. And this is a proposition that goes before the Supreme Court. They call you in to offer not just legal, but also ethical advice. Would you advise against this, and if so, why?
Well, as you have described the law, I would advise against it, but you haven't described it very precisely. Because you've talked about people who are handicapped or intellectually disabled. You haven't said, for example, whether they are infants, born...
Let's make it more precise. Let's take people who have Alzheimer's disease, who in a sense have no real comprehension of life. In that sense, they've lost, as you say, not only the ability to consciously enjoy the past, the present, they have no projection in the future. Let's say the proposal is lethal injection for all people with Alzheimer's who have no family. Are you for it or against it, and why?
I'm against it because people with Alzheimer's have had a period of life when they have been, like you and me, capable of deciding how they want to live and how they want to die. And if they fill in a statement saying that when they get Alzheimer's, they no longer want to go on living, I would be in favour of passing a law that said that someone could give them a lethal injection when they reach the point that they have described in their document, before witnesses, perhaps with a cooling off period, come back to it a week or two later or something like that. I would be in favour of a law that allowed someone to do what they had requested under those circumstances. But I would not be in favour of a law that ended the lives of people who had had a chance to think about that and who had not requested that form of ending their life.
But aren't you injecting new data into my example? I was talking about people who haven't made any such statements.
Yes, well, that's why I oppose the law.
Okay,
that's
so you would require... Okay, go ahead. Now it's your turn.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, you said that I had not responded to the questions that you said in your beginning, but that's because I thought we were focusing on the existence of God. I don't believe that you have responded to the argument from evil, the argument about suffering. You did say that this is not original, that indeed it's in the book of Job. I know that. You did say that, well, it presupposes that we care, and you think Darwinians shouldn't care. But there's a lot more I can say about that. As I said, I think we are capable of caring. We have empathy for others, and we have the capacity to extend that to strangers because of our higher cognitive abilities. So many of us, even though we're atheists, do care, and that's understandable. You still haven't told me how it can be that a world with this kind of suffering, not caused by human free will, could be created by an all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good divinity.
Well, first of all, it seems to me that this argument is less an argument about the existence of God and more an argument about the nature of God. In other words, you seem to be saying, if God did it, he's really a mean God. Right? You're not challenging the existence of God. You're simply saying his character is, from your point of view, deficient, because if you were God, you would have done it differently.
I started off by saying that I thought we were debating the Christian or Judeo-Christian concept of God. Isn't it true that that concept does mean that God has the attributes that I mentioned?
Well, our debate is God, yes or no. We're exploring the implications of theism and atheism. And so we, as we discussed earlier, we can interpret this any way we want. Now, I'm happy to address the points you raised. Look, in a sense, you could say God could have created a lawful universe, or he could have created an arbitrary universe. A lawful universe is a universe which operates according to physical laws. Science would be impossible if we didn't have a lawful universe, for example. So you seem to be suggesting God would have done better to create a discretionary universe in which, for example, if the ocean tide is rising and a tsunami is brewing, God jumps in like a cosmic bellboy, puts a stop to it, right?
Well, that's one possibility, but I can think of others which would have eliminated suffering or greatly reduced
unnecessary suffering. Is it possible to eliminate suffering and still have a lawful universe, according to you?
I would have thought God could do that. It would be, pretty easy, I would have thought, for an all-powerful being to create a...
Pretty easy?
Yeah, I would have thought so.
You would have thought so. Okay. Look,